Hello again, and welcome to the Near Futurist podcast. Don't come here looking for insights into the longer term. We're much more interested in what's actionable almost immediately. My name is Guy Clapperton. Now, are you one of those people who hates it when a podcaster tries to flog their own services before getting to the guest? Well, unlucky. Here's a quick plug for my media training service at Clapperton Media Training. Do you or your clients want to sound as confident, clear, and fluent in media interviews as the people in this podcast? Of course you do. My team and I can help. Drop my assistant Lindsay, that's lindsay@clapperton.co.uk, a note, and she'll set us a time for an initial chat. Or go to the website at clapperton.co.uk, two P's, to find out more. Now, back to the podcast. And that's quite enough of that. I'm in the middle of reading a book on conspiracy theories at the moment, and it's really good. Now, one of the things I'm hoping is that it's going to consider all those terrible things we've heard about 5G masks. They're full of radiation. Bill Gates is using them to control us all, unless I'm getting confused, and that was the COVID vaccine. Anyway, it's baloney. But bad news, I think it's going to happen again, unless I'm much mistaken. My guest is probably dreading it. She's a distinguished academic, full professor at the University of Bristol, the co-director of the university's Institute of Digital Futures, and the director of Smart Internet Lab. Her research is focusing in the fields of high-performance networks, programmable networks, wireless optical convergence, and yes, I've been cutting and pasting from LinkedIn again. You can tell I'm a mile off, I know that. She is currently head of the UK's 6G Testbed, that's right, 6G, and her name is Professor Dimitra Simeonidou. Dimitra, welcome.
Hello, Guy. Good to meet you.
I may have been a bit cynical in that intro, although the 5G conspiracy theorists certainly exist. How important, looking back, were those conspiracy theories to the industry as a whole? Did it hold you back?
I mean, public perception, as we all know, about mobile phone radiation has never been that good. And that is across the generations from 2G onwards. I do remember citizens actually protesting having a mobile phone mast close to their homes or to their school. But actually, public concerns and public perception with what we have seen in terms of conspiracy theories and people going out and burning mobile phone masts during the pandemic, there is a huge gap. And I spent a lot of time thinking about this. And there are some certain reasons, technical reasons, some certain features of 5G that they probably caused concern. And the one is, at least at the beginning, we all believe that 5G is going to operate in higher frequencies. There was a lot of talk about millimeter wave and higher frequencies. They have different public safety features than where we are operating right now. So new frequencies, quite a lot to discuss in terms of public safety. And the second one was that the fact that 5G was destined to actually connect machines. So the whole Big Brother effect came into play in a big way. And of course, we are having a lot of social media, and conspiracy theorists, they actually thrive on social media. And it happened what we have seen that happened with conspiracy theorists, and they went wild. Now, has that affected the industry? In terms of the industry itself, not much. But what makes us all aware about is that we have a duty to establish that public communication channel, which it has to be truthful and transparent. And at the beginning of a generation of new mobile technologies, to actually establish that element of trust. And I have seen much more around public health, associated around 5G, and reports and public lectures and newspaper and TV articles that I have never seen before. And I think, or at least I hope, that as we are going to the next generation, that becomes a culture. And we are established actually that trust, the communication with the public very early on, which is now.
That makes an awful lot of sense. And I suppose the thing is, it's very difficult to prove a negative. This doesn't do something. You can also point to it and say, look, there it is not doing it. And that doesn't necessarily prove the point. But there have been, I believe, no reports of genuine illness caused by 5G masts or anything like that. So it's just not happening. Let's reflect back a few years, though, looking at the advantage of the technology. I don't want to spend the whole podcast talking about conspiracy theories. We always take technology for granted once it's established. It just does stuff and we almost forget it was ever new. So what can we do now, whether on an industrial scale or on a consumer scale, that we couldn't do before 5G? I mean, you mentioned machines talking to each other, for example.
If we want to be very honest, 5G has not been the great success that we wanted it to be. And the main reason is that actually 5G, what we experience of 5G at the moment, is really a consumer product. And 5G has not been designed for consumers. Also, when 5G was launched, was not ready really for launch. So for a very long time, even now, we are having what we name a non-standalone 5G. That means that we have actually 5G riding on the 4G infrastructure, which of course gave us increased capacity, more megabits per second or a gigabit per second, but it didn't give us what was essential for 5G to give. And this is that low latency to actually being able to drive this transformation in the sectors like manufacturing or transport or smart cities and so on. So we haven't seen really any of this. As a result of this, service providers, they didn't make the revenue that they actually wanted or predicted to make with 5G. And therefore, there has been a very, very slow rollout of 5G infrastructure and 5G services. What we are start seeing right now is moving to a real 5G, or what we call standalone 5G, where actually start fulfilling its promise for making that, for working a business-to-business network rather than a business-to-consumer network, which is very important. So we start seeing now more industrial deployments of 5G, and we are start experiencing, especially not so much in Europe, I must say, especially in Asia, there is quite a lot, there are a lot of examples, for instance, for autonomous transport and smart city deployments at scale and so on, where 5G shines through. I would hope to have this in Europe. In Europe, and especially in the UK, we had to deal with the removal of what we call high-risk vendors from our infrastructure, or more likely name Huawei, really, from our infrastructure, which costed more money than it was expected. So the rollout of what we hope to see as a full 5G has not actually materialized yet.
So is it actually too soon to be talking about 6G? Because I know that's in the pipeline. But first of all, what's going to be possible with 6G that wasn't before? But supplementary question is, shouldn't we actually be focusing on getting 5G right first?
Yes, that is a very good question, and a question that is often being asked. We cannot stop evolution of our networks. And definitely service providers should be focusing to realize 5G. And this is quite important, because we need to get that low latency. We need to get that benefit to industry from mobile networks. So that is the first one. So if we are looking at 4G delivers speed, 5G is supposed to deliver low latency. If we are looking at 6G, the key feature of 6G is to be ubiquitous, to be everywhere. And this is probably not what it's said very often when we are describing 6G. So 6G is really connectivity everywhere. And that, I know that has been really the focus or the vision of all networks and all mobile networks, but we are not there yet. So what 6G is going to bring is what we call convergence, or network of networks. That means that we have quite a lot of connectivity infrastructure out there, for instance, fiber broadband, mobile networks, satellite networks. Can we find a way for all these networks to converge or integrate it, and they work together? And can we use actually AI to predict loss of connectivity and move ahead to allocate to a user the connectivity that is available at any time? So that is the first feature of 6G and the most important one. So when we get into the 6G era, because we are going to be able to converge all technologies, cellular RANs, Wi-Fi, new access technologies, together with satellite technologies. Hopefully, we are going to get to that point that we never lose connectivity when we are moving or when we are not moving. That's number one. Number two about 6G is this new feature around integration of communication and sensing. That means that actually the network to be able to sense itself and use AI to actually fix problems in the infrastructure. And the second one, the network to be able to sense its environment. So sensing what people are doing, sensing what things are doing. And of course, there are a lot of ethical considerations around that sensing of the environment, but we can see new things, like, for instance, very highly increased location accuracy, people and robots interacting, robots sensing humans, and vice versa, and so on. And the third big thing, or if you like, the big dream about 6G, is really to bring our physical environment and the cyber environment together. So what we are doing now, Guy, with one another, having our physical presence, being apart and using Zoom to come together digitally, and that's not a very satisfying experience because it doesn't look very natural. It is what it is. Can we actually get into the space that we use networks to bring digital presence of people together in a way that it feels like a physical presence? And this is not only about avatars and avatars sitting around a meeting table. This is actually bringing sensory information at the same time. For instance, information around touch and smell and temperature and things like this. Are we going to get there in the next generation? If not, we are going to get there in the generation after next. So there are a lot of things, there are steps that we have to take to realize what 6G is about and what the benefits that 6G we hope is going to bring.
That's interesting. I'd like to pick up on one point in particular. You mentioned coverage and it being universal and ubiquitous. I mean, on a consumer level, I visit my mother sometimes. This involves traveling between Clapham Junction and Dorset. This anecdote will get better. But the sheer number of communications blackouts I get en route is embarrassing. I mean, sometimes I get no signal whatsoever. And that's within a first world country. It's a 2.5 hour rail journey. It's really not an extreme piece of travel. Now, on the industrial level, I was talking a couple of weeks ago to some people in the Midlands about wireless technology. I was speaking at the Made in Britain Awards. So these were manufacturers. And they told me I was being very London-centric for assuming that back-office processes could all be cashless because they just didn't have the coverage. And, of course, that affected their machine-to-machine learning as well. So I'm just wondering, how are we going to ensure that 6G has that coverage where 5G has, as you say, manifestly failed?
Well, I mean, manifestly failed is a big word, but yes, that's what more or less I said. I was thinking exactly the same. I was traveling to Brussels last week, and I was in Eurostar after a long time using Eurostar. And literally from London to the tunnel, actually I had zero connectivity, almost zero mobile network connectivity. And I was thinking, are our networks getting worse? And this is really an empirical way because I don't have any evidence to say our networks are getting worse. But I also share your experience, in cross-country travel from Bristol to Leeds, for instance. So it's exactly the same experience. So our networks may be getting worse for many reasons, and we should actually continue to improve connectivity with 5G, based on the infrastructure that we have at the moment. We cannot stop that. We cannot wait for 2030 to actually start getting benefits of a new generation of networks, which is going to be 6G, if we actually see deployment in 2030 and not later. So that is the one of the things that I know we can do. It's not a matter of technology, it's a matter of investment. And it's a matter also of network service providers working together to cover each other's black spots. And we are not doing it effectively at the moment. So this needs to be done, and we should be continue doing it. Now, when we go to 6G, there are going to be other actually tools that we are going to be using for making this happen in a natural way. And this is, as I mentioned before, being able to utilize whatever access technology we have. Today, we have a huge distinction across cellular connectivity and Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is improving so much that actually we should using it instead of cellular whenever it makes sense. We have satellite in the mix, and satellite is going to hopefully solve all your problems when you are visiting your mother, because they are absolutely wonderful to work in rural environments. And there is quite a lot of development on satellite that makes it now quite suitable, especially when we are looking at low orbit satellites, that makes it suitable for high mobility scenarios. So having a single network, and mainly when I say a single network, I don't mean a single infrastructure. I mean the software layers and actually intelligence that's going to be bringing all these infrastructures together to provide us continuity of service all the time. That is what 6G is going to bring. And it's not the big things. I mean, the metaverse and the cyber-physical continuum that I actually describe is important. We need to get there, but getting that connectivity everywhere and all the time on, the connectivity we need is the most important feature that we should focus and bring forward.
So, complete connectivity and a network of networks, plus a better sense of being physically together when we're in cyberspace. That's plenty to think about for part 1 of this Near Futurist interview. Next week, you guessed it, part 2 will be coming up, in which Professor Simeonidou will look into timescales, specific applications, the impact on our phones and other devices, and also how much energy this stuff is going to consume. Meanwhile, don't forget to check the website at nearfuturist.net, where you can find as many back episodes as you want. I'm Guy Clapperton. See you next week. Thanks for listening.